Good morning. We are the Unitarian Universalist Church in Meriden and the Matatuck Unitarian Universalist Society, working together to advance our shared values of spiritual growth and advancing the cause of social justice in a community of trust and mutuality.
I'm Pinky Chillemi from the MUUS Social Justice Coordinating Team. This service was created and is presented by the Social Justice Team from UUCM and the MUUS Social Justice Coordinating Team. Jeff May is our producer. Our service is about voting as a spiritual practice. The Unitarian Universalist Association, our national organization, has always supported democratic principles and free and fair elections. As a faith community, UUs are vocal and active about voting rights and have contributed to change throughout history. In the past several years, UUs have been part of a groundswell of voting rights, electoral work, and democracy movements that have emerged and gained even more momentum since the 2016 U.S. elections. With the increasing control of our government by corporate and special interests, voter suppression, and the alarming rise of authoritarianism, we face many challenges to ensure democracy and a just society. The UUA is sponsoring UU the Vote as a call to action for UUs and other like-minded people leading up to the 2020 election. MUUS members have allied with We Can't to send postcards all around the country to ensure voters who have maybe been eliminated from the voting rolls are aware of their voting status and have the opportunity to become eligible to vote. We hope the service will inspire you to take action or continue to take action as we head into the final months of the 2020 campaign season. There's a lot going on right now, so keep up with what's happening by visiting our websites and Facebook pages frequently. Sign up for our weekly email newsletters. Right after this service, there will be coffee hours for each congregation in Zoom. We'll give you the sign information at the end of the service.
Our chalice lighting words are from Lyndon B. Johnson in his speech to Congress introducing the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The President referred to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. President Johnson then said, "Our fathers believed that if this noble view of the rights of man was to flourish, it must be rooted in democracy. The most basic right of all was the right to choose our own leaders. The history of this country, in large measure, is the history of the expansion of that right to all of our people. Many of the issues of civil rights are very complex and most difficult, but about this there can and should be no argument. Every American citizen has an equal right to vote. There is no reason which can excuse the denial of that vote. There is no duty which weighs more heavily on us than the duty we have to ensure the right to vote.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
Fourth grader launches group urging residents to vote. The fact that Farmington Hills resident Ronnie Dimon spends her spare time advocating and educating her peers about voting solidifies the notion that she isn't a typical fourth grader. Ronnie, 9, attends the High Meadow Common Campus and has started an ambitious journey to spread the word about voting through the launch of a children's group called Farmington Kids Go TV. The group highlights the importance of voting and the need to urge parents and guardians to vote. I thought maybe I can do something, Ronnie said. I was kind of shy at first, then I felt better. I thought that I could make a difference. Ronnie said the idea came after she had a conversation with her mother, Treeman Jagdev, about an upcoming school bond that's set to go before voters May 5th. Ronnie said she hopes her group will be able to mobilize parents and get them to the polls on that day. In an effort to approve a $131 million bond proposal that district officials said will finance improvements, safety, and other updates. That's my goal, Jagdev said. I want my kids to be good citizens. Ronnie, who is involved in the Junior Optimists, as well as other youth organizations, plans to recruit potential members from around her school district. So far, about 10 of her classmates have joined the group. Ronnie gathered about 30 signatures over a 2-day period at High Meadow parent-teacher conferences last week. She also gave a presentation to about 250 students at a school assembly on Friday. She's done a really nice job. We want to make sure we're creating global citizens, said Principal Diane Sanders. Every Friday we have a celebration of knowledge, and I'm very proud of her. Every child is a leader. Students sitting in the audience might see something and have an idea. We want them to change the world. Ronnie said she'll never forget the lesson she learned about getting people to come together for a cause. I learned that you have to reach out. You can't expect them to come to you.
Let us settle into this moment together, to sink into the wisdom that this work is sacred. The work of justice is sacred. The work of organizing and voting and protecting democracy is sacred. We know that our country is broken. We know that our system is not fair. We know that our democracy serves the powerful and the wealthy, and not all of us. We know it is rigged. But it is not too late. We hold space in this room for those most impacted and harmed by this brokenness. We do not forget or ignore the human faces behind the oppression, the incarcerated who have lost their voice in an unjust system, the undocumented who are our neighbors and pay their fair share, the citizen whose voting station has been closed, whose name has been taken from the registration lists, who lacks an ID and is turned away from the poll. Let us bring into this space our ancestors, those who throughout history were deprived of their democratic rights because of their skin color, their ethnicity, their gender, their citizenship status, their poverty, their education. Bring into this space the radicals, the activists, organizers, the reformers who fought for the vote. Bring into this space those who gave their lives for this freedom, the right to have our voice heard, the freedom that we defend today. May all of them be with us here. May they remind us of the stakes. May they remind us of their courage. May they remind us that the path to justice is long and frustrating and full of setbacks, but there is always hope. There is still hope. We have good and faithful company in this work. All those who came before, all those out there right now, all of us here. It is not yet too late. There is still hope. Let us work together.
Thank you for joining us for this worship experience. We plan to live stream this service on Sunday, August 30th with our guest speaker, Samuel Prince, joining us remotely from Akron, Ohio. But a major internet disruption got in the way, so we're presenting this in recorded format instead. It's been my pleasure to know Samuel Prince for many years. His commitment to justice issues are at the very core of his values, and he's dedicated himself to educating others. He serves on the board of Black Lives UU and the Murray Grove Retreat. As chair of the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ohio, he helps connect UU congregations to change legislative policies with their partners, the Poor People's Campaign. Samuel started his UU journey with the Unitarian Society of Hamden, and then he joined the UU Church in Meriden before moving to Ohio. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to our pulpit today.
I thank you, Jeff. I thank you for that warm introduction. And again, as what Jeff had said, my name is Samuel Prince, and I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Akron, where I live in Akron, Ohio. I used to be a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Meriden for a number of years, and until I moved to Ohio. I would also like to give a thank you out to the friends in Metatalk. Metatalk and Meriden have asked me to do a presentation, a sermon on UU Devote. So here I am. I thank you. On April 12th of 1964, 1 month after leaving the Nation of Islam, Malcolm Little, also known as Malcolm X, gave his infamous ballot or the bullet speech at King Solomon Baptist Church in Detroit. He had given this very same address 9 years earlier in Cleveland, although The version that he had given in Detroit is regarded by some scholars as the most definitive speech. It was the fullest declaration of his black nationalist philosophy. And even mainstream black leaders in Detroit tried to block Malcolm X from using the church, saying that his separatist ideas can do nothing but set the black colored man causes way back. But the church was already rented out, so there's nothing that they could do about it. The ballot or the bullet became one of Malcolm X's most recognizable phrases, and the speech was one of his greatest oration. 2,000 people, including some of his opponents, turned out to hear him speak in Detroit. Now, keep in mind that Lyndon Johnson, President Lyndon Johnson at that time, was running for re-election in 1964. So it goes without reason that Malcolm X would declare that year of 1964 to be the year of the ballot or the bullet. He outlined a new global sensibility of fight for racial justice. We intend to expand the freedom struggle from a level of civil rights to a level of human rights. And although Malcolm X had died in February 12th of 1965, he got to see the Civil Rights Act signed on July the 2nd of 1964, but he did not get to see the Voting Rights Act later in 1965. Within that speech in which Malcolm X had given, he said that we suffer political oppression, economic exploitation, and social degradation, all of them from the same enemy. The government has failed us. You can't deny that. At any time you are living in the 20th century of 1964 and you walk around singing "We Shall Overcome," the government has failed you. This is part of what is wrong with you. You keep singing too much. Today is the time to stop singing and start swinging. Yes, friends, those were tough language. In the ballot or the bullet speech, Malcolm X advocated for racial and economic and social justice. He did not want to have religion to stand in the way of justice. My friends, at that time, many preachers or pastors, ministers, and sometimes I would say even today, they had a hard time intersecting how spirituality and justice work. There's a collaboration. It was hard for them to see that justice was a spiritual practice. And therefore, Malcolm X's speech called for keeping a religion private. It should be between the person and his God or her God or their gods and or them gods. The ballot or the bullet, though directed at African Americans and encouraged them to stand up for their rights and vote, it also encourages all to be sensible of our vote and to who we vote for. He then goes on to state that if this is not enough, they may have to resort to violence. And my friends, we're living in the year of 2020 right now, and we could see what this meant. The fact that those who have been marginalized in many ways, they're fighting back. Yes, we're not advocating for violence, but what we are seeing is individuals who are saying if there is no peace, if there is no justice, there is no peace. Now, let's juxtapose what Malcolm X had said with what LBJ's speech was on March the 15th of 1965. There, President Lyndon Johnson, he gave a special message to Congress. The American promise is what he called that speech. We shall overcome. Now, keep in mind what happened the previous week on March the 7th of 1965. That is when a group of about 600 people, including activists John Lewis, Hosea Williams, set out from Selma to march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Those marchers didn't get far before the Alabama State troopers, wielding whips, nightsticks, and tear gas, rushed the group at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, beat them back Selma. My friends, I had the opportunity of being in Selma in December of last year, and I could feel those steps of my ancestors. I could feel the ground in which they walk on. I could smell the things that would have happened there. It was a vivid thoughts in which I had. A matter of fact, as you cross the bridge from Selma, going a little bit over, there is a voting center. That was the voting center that was used, and it is still there right now. The brutal scene was captured on tele- television, enraging many Americans, primarily white Americans, and drawing civil rights and religious leaders of all faith to Selma with protests. Can we say James Reeb? Can we say Viola Lueso? Say their names. The Voting Rights Act was signed and put into law 6 months later on August the 6th of 1965. And this past August, on August the 6th of 2020, it marked the 55th year of our Voting Rights Act. Further, in Lyndon B. Johnson's speech, he also said that today is a triumph for freedom as huge as any victory that has ever been won on any battlefield. Yet, to seize the meaning of that day, we must recall the darker times. 3.5 centuries ago, the first Negro arrived at Jamestown. They did not arrive in brave ships in search of a home of freedom. They did not mingle fear and joy in expectation that is this new world anything would be possible to a man strong enough to reach out for it. Lyndon Johnson went on to also say that for centuries of oppression and hatred have taken their painful toll. It can be seen throughout our land in men without skills, in children without fathers, in family that are imprisoned in slums and in poverty. For it is not enough just to give men rights. They must also use those rights in their personal pursuit of happiness. These words were quoted in our Chalice Leiden by Steve. But also, Lyndon B. Johnson went on to also say that the wounds and the weaknesses, the outward walls and the inward scars which diminish achievement are the work of American society. We must all now to end them, help to end them through expanding programs already devised or through new ones to search out and forever end that special handicap of those who are black in a nation that happen to be mostly white. My friends, since America was founded, the issue of voter suppression have taken place. Ever since the Constitution was written, some of the nation leaders have sought to deny a vote to those who they think or might wrest away their power. On August the 12th of 1890, more than 100 men had gathered at the Mississippi State Capitol for a constitutional convention. In his opening speech, Judge Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who is the president of the convention, charged delegates with a single task. Do you know what that task was? It was to create or to devise a way to keep black men from voting in Mississippi. My friends, voter suppression was in full swing at that time. But let's fast forward to June the 25th of 2013. What happened then? Our Supreme Court struck down, removed our Supreme Court gutted Section 5 and Section 4B of the Voting Rights Act, deeming it as unconstitutional. They passed it to Congress, who had failed to this day to act to solidify a brand new formula that could be used for each state, each county, each jurisdiction that would need to have a preclearance of our federal government prior to being able to make any voting changes. My friends, this gave way to gerrymandering. And we see that in our times in the year of 2020. This is why our Unitarian Universalist fifth principle, it promotes and affirms the right of conscience in the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Yes, our very democracy is at stake. Our democracy is at stake when there are 198 non-black judges who are appointed with lifetime appointments that will affect you, that will affect me, our children, our grandchildren, with laws for a generation to come. Yes, my friends, elections are at stake here. It is our spiritual practice to become involved. Our Unitarian Universalists have a program out there as to which would help us. The program is called UU Devote, www.uudevote.org. And on that website are the words faith, love, action, together are very prominent on that website. And so are these words of our Unitarian Universalist Association president, Susan Frederick Gray, who says, for Unitarian Universalists, this is faithful and moral action because democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote are at the very heart of our seven principles. This work is about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is about restoring right relationships with our planet. It's about our commitment to justice and equity for all people. We are called to courageously embody the deepest values of our faith with our hearts, with our bodies, with our spirit, while we are building toward an abundant future in which all are free and flourishing. I would say where all are free and thriving. But how do congregations do this? Congregations organize. On that website, it listed 50 ways as to how you could organize your congregation. Yes, friends, 50 ways. But we will just speak of a few of them right now. It says a way as to how you could organize your congregation is to form an electoral justice committee at your church. Meriden and Matatock, are you doing that? It says that you could also contact justice organizations in your community and volunteer for their outreach efforts. Meriden, Matatock, are you doing such? You could donate to partners and frontline community organizations. Matatock and Meriden, are you doing such? You could connect with other denominations to participate in a Souls to the Polls Mobilization Day. Meriden and Matatock, are you doing that? But what I love is this last one there, which is way number 50. It says, connect with other Unitarian Universalist congregations in your area to join forces and expand your volunteer pool. Yes, my friends, it is time for communities of faith to get involved. Yes, it is our electoral and a spiritual practice. I am a tri-chair in Ohio of the Poor People's Campaign. This past week, we have unveiled a toolkit that would help communities of faith to become involved in voter outreach. My friends, if you would like that help, I could assist you. But let me add one more thing. It seems as our level of acceptability have reached a zenith of being comfortable with loss of lives. Yes, friends, there's been, as I am speaking today, there's about 182,000 people who have lost their life. At the same time, there must be a level of accountability that you vote, that I vote, that we vote when it is constitutionally applied to move us forward. As we compare the words of Malcolm X, as we compare the words of John Lewis, as we compare the words of Lyndon Baines Johnson, as we compare the words of Martin Luther King, do you think they had something in common? Yes, they did. What they had in common was consciousness. It was a faith. It was a belief in mankind. I would add a belief in humankind. So let us not cast stones against each other. Sometimes my view of justice may not be your way of justice, but we don't need to be casting stones. We may be from different mothers or fathers, but we are still one. These are the times now when we must show ourselves, we must show our creators, we must show our ancestors how we can move forward. Let me close my sermon with these words. These are words from Letitia Wedman, who is the sister of Jacob Blake. Yes, the Jacob Blake who was shot 7 times in the back. So many people have reached out to me saying they're sorry that this has been happening to my family. Well, don't be sorry, because this has been happening to my family for a long time, longer than I can account for. It has happened to Emil Till. Emil Till is my family. It had happened to Philando Castile. Philando Castile is my family. It had happened to Mike Brown. Mike Brown is my family. It had happened to Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland is my family. It had happened to Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor is my family. I shed tears for every single one of these people that it has happened to. I am not sad. I am not afraid. I am angry. I am tired, Whitman said. I have not cried once. I have stopped crying years ago. I am numb. I have been watching police murder people who look like me for years, she says. I don't want your pity. I want change. Amen. Blessed be. Thank you. Ashe.
Dr. Martin Luther King wrote these words in 1965, and they still resonate today. We cannot rest. Laurels have not yet been earned. We must toil on during the hot, sweltering summer months. We must get out. We must get our long-deprived people registered in the South's infamous Black Belt counties. Voting legislation does not put the names of Negroes on voting lists. We are not so naive as to believe persons who have traditionally opposed our right to vote will now desist from intimidating us. There must be a change. There will be a change. For to deny a person the right to exercise his political freedom at the polls is no less a dastardly act as to deny a Christian the right to petition God in prayer.
for a lot of people. Some of those people are members of our congregation. Some of those people are members of the communities that our congregations serve in Greater Meriden and Greater Woodbury. I would really appreciate it if all of you who could do so, please give generously by donating online or sending checks into the church. During this time, we need your financial support more than ever. You are making a difference with every dollar you donate, helping us pay rent for people, helping us provide food for people, helping people survive while they are unemployed or underemployed during this time of pandemic. Thanks for your generosity. We deeply appreciate it.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are one. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was enacted to ensure that voters would not be not allowed to vote based on their race. And important section of the Voting Rights Act was Section 5, which said that certain states and jurisdictions which had a history of discriminating against non-white voters would have to submit any potential changes to their voting rules and laws and policies to the Department of Justice before those rules or policies could be enacted. And overall, the Voting Rights Act was successful. More non-white people were elected to Congress, and a greater percentage of minorities voted. Then, in 2013, the Supreme Court struck down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act basically on a technicality, saying that those 9 states and jurisdictions no longer needed to get pre-clearance from the Department of Justice before changing their laws. Since then, thousands of polling places have been closed. Many states have put into place new voter identification laws, which require lots of steps for people to follow. And in general, many voter rolls have been purged. And so it has become increasingly more and more difficult for people of color and for poor people to vote. So we find ourselves in 2020 in a place where, once again, we need to be fighting for equal right to vote for all citizens. One way that we have been doing that at MUUS is supporting the NAACP in actions they've been taking to write postcards to voters in different parts of the country who have had these kinds of laws enacted, to let them know that their name may have been purged from the voting rolls so they can check and see if they're still registered to vote before the 2020 election, to remind people to vote, to let people know if their polling places have been changed. Ed Edelson and others have been really active in this movement, Angela Frisbee, so please talk to them, talk to me, if you are interested in getting involved in writing any postcards. And I think it also gives us an opportunity to look back and reflect as we finish our service today on the words of Frederick Douglass as he appeared before Congress just after the Civil War to request an impartial look at the possibility of letting the Negro man vote. Here's Frederick Douglass.
A very limited statement of the argument for impartial suffrage and for including the Negro in the body politic would require more space than can be reasonably asked here. It is supported by reasons as broad as the nature of man and as numerous as the wants of society. Man is the only government-making animal in the world. His right to a participation in the production and operation of government is an inference from his nature, as direct and self-evident as is his right to acquire property or education. It is no less a crime against the manhood of a man to declare that he shall not share in the making and directing of the government under which he lives than to say that he shall not acquire property and education. It is plain that if the right belongs to any, it belongs to all. We extinguish our chalice, but we keep the flame with us in our hearts. Continue to be kind, courageous, and compassionate. We will get through this time together. Go in peace, stay well, and take care of each other.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these lives. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead